What about the saturated fat content, Erdman? Doesn't red meat contribute to bowel cancer, Erdman? The gnat's arse would pucker. Or mad cow disease, Erdman. They claim they've eradicated it, but who's to say they're telling the truth? Once upon a time, he'd have teased the worry lines from her face, firing silly jokes at her until they were both laughing, and she would lean into him, fingers tangling his hair, breathing him in, her fears forgotten. Why do they call it PMS, Lilith? I don't know, Erdman. Why do they call it PMS? Because mad cow disease is already taken. Bada bing. But these days, he couldn't even raise a smile. These days, her eyes followed Jakey's every move, her fears not forgotten but amplified 1,000-fold by a cruel enemy that was reducing their son, and now their marriage, into paper butterflies, fragile and easily broken. They told their boy, Lilith and Erdman, that he had a little problem with his bones. That was something of an understatement. Jakey's little problem would end up killing him. The medical team who delivered him had suspected it immediately, thanks to the telltale malformation of his big toes. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. 35 letters, a letter, give or take, for each year Jakey was expected to live, the average life expectancy. Any more would be a bonus. By chance, a nurse in the maternity unit had spent the previous 6 months working in an Australian hospital where a teenager had reported with strange bony growths and loss of movement. They'd injected pain-killing drugs into her muscles, she'd explained, surgically removed the extra ribbons of bone, and all they had done was make it 1,000,000 times worse. By the time she was diagnosed, she was practically a statue, barely able to move at all, except to speak. She could still speak. The nurse had told them that as if it was some kind of blessing. 6 years on, even the specialists were shocked at the speed of the progression of his illness, that Jakey's flare-ups were unusually severe for one so young, that his body was following the characteristic path of the disease, but already it had reached his arms much earlier than they'd anticipated, that a fall or bump could trigger a life-threatening episode. To enjoy their time with their son. Erdman's fingers grazed the cool, damp packaging in his trolley. He should put it back. Lilith would kill him, and he didn't want to upset her, not really. He longed for the joyous freedom of their love before it was tangled up in hospital appointments and medication, but he was weary of always doing what she told him to. Anyhow, he hadn't got BSE or CJD or whatever the hell it was, and he was pushing 40. If that metaphorical cowpat was heading his way, it would have dumped on his life by now, which, let's be honest, was already shitty enough. Even if the worst did happen, he wouldn't notice the transition from middle-aged man to vegetable. A potato had more fun than he did. Fuck it. Jakey loved roast dinners, and he needed building up. Had Erdman known that he was sealing his son's fate in that most glamorous of locations, Tesco on Lewisham Road, the whole family would have become vegetarian. But he didn't, and so he headed home, smug in the knowledge that as he had done the shopping, it was his prerogative to decide what they had for tea. Chapter 2. 3:23 p.m. Ip-dip-doo, the cat's got the flu, the monkey's got the chickenpox, so out go you. Poppy Smith was pointing straight at her, giggling through the gap in the top row of her teeth, but Clara Foyle wasn't smiling. "Not playing," said Clara, and turned her back on the small knot of children in their game of tag. She marched off in the direction of the gates at the far end of the infant playground, her hands buried deep into her pockets. It was almost empty, just a few stragglers waiting.